Bienvenidos a este nuevo vídeo de Devir TV. Hoy estamos en el stand de Ares, en la feria de Essen, y volvemos a tener con nosotros a grandísimo Roberto Di Meglio.
Buongiorno, gracias.
Buongiorno. How are you, Roberto?
Everything good.
Very good to
Nice
see you again.
Great to see you again.
Great fair.
Yes.
Having fun.
Yes, it is. Yes, it was a little bit of a drama yesterday,
I know.
because we were waiting for the shipment with Kings of Middle Earth to arrive, and it didn't. So in the end, yesterday night it arrived. So
But the heroes finally came.
Yes. The cavalry
Yeah,
came in just in time with a transparent.
Awesome. Today we're going to talk about expansions because we have two of them that are about the War of the Ring.
Correct.
But one of those is for War of the Ring, the card game.
Yes.
And the other one is the last expansion
For
Last
now.
for now. For the War of the Ring second edition, the big board game. We'll start with the expansion for the card game.
Yes.
It's Against the Shadow, a solo cooperative expansion.
Solo. You can't miss a solo mode in these days.
That's true. A lot of people was expecting it.
Yeah, when we started working on War of the Ring, the card game, we say, everybody says that War of the Ring is only good as a two-player game. I don't think it's true. I think it's great for player playing as teams too, but anyway, that was the popular opinion. And so say, okay, try to make a great multiplayer game. So where up to 4 people can play natively. That's the experience that we want to design. And then the moment we announced it was all about, but is there a solo mode there? And so, we
want it all.
And we wanted to make our players happy, of course, as much as we could. So we set up to work with Ian Brody, the designer of the game, and he came up with interesting ideas on how to make the game playable solo. With a focus on playing the 3 people player against the shadow, which also makes sense thematically speaking, And also we realized that this could grow as a 2-player co-op experience.
Cool.
So it started initially as just a simple set of control rules, a bot essentially for the shadow decks, so that the shadow decks could play themselves. But then we soon realized that to make the game experience flow better, we needed to tweak a lot of the individual card text. And so we started tweaking this. Okay, this card now means this thing, this other card now works like that. We realized that this was unwieldy, that was not practical from a player's perspective. So we told Ian, okay, why don't we just change all the cards that we need to change and just say pack them as a small expansion. And then when we told this to Ian, he was so excited because but now I can redesign many more of the cards than just having like a cheat sheet with the changes. Because if we reprint the cards, I can change. Can I change as many of them as I can? Okay, so let's go ahead. And so in the end, making a long story short, there are 2 entirely new shadow decks, which thematically speaking are thematically the same cards. So Devilry of Orthanc stays Devilry of Orthanc in the co-op deck, but the card text and the card events normally are most of the time are changed significantly. So essentially, in terms of gameplay, this becomes very easy because all you need to do is you replace the 2 shadow decks with the 2 new ones. There is a simple chart which tells you how the bot behaves, a couple of rule changes on the way the shadow bots play. Say, for example, the shadow bots don't cycle away cards. There is this mechanic which is key part of the game, that when you play a card, you discard another card from hand. We call this cycling. and the shadow bot just plays because of course it has no intelligence on deciding what's best to cycle. So there are a couple of rules tweaked like that, the simple algorithm to drive the decision, and to entirely new deck, and you can, as the 3 people player, you play just a normal game.
Exactly the same.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
But when you play solo, you have any advantage as 3 people, or it's the same?
no. It's the same thing. When you play solo, you can play solo in 2 different ways. That is, you can play solo in dual mode, so just using one 3 people deck against one shadow deck shuffled together,
Okay.
or you can play solo as in the 4-player mode, so playing two-handed with both 3 people deck against the 2 shadow decks. So, but from the 3 people's player perspective, you are just playing exactly the same game, but the shadow becomes very aggressive. So it's really relentless because essentially they play twice as many cards as they do in the normal game. So it's shadow hordes coming.
They don't think much, but they
Yeah, they don't think much, but they are
lot
very
of
aggressive.
cards.
So it's very fun. It's quite challenging. But the good thing is that if you know how to play the game, you already know how to play the solo expansion, essentially.
Very good. And there's different levels of difficulty for solo mode on
Yes,
top?
we tweaked a little bit the difficulty using the card draw, the number of cards that the shadow bots draw. So if you use the regular draw rule for the shadow, then it's really mean. So it may be the first time you play, you want to make it a little easier. So the 2 bots draw 1 card less, but that's the only thing. We just tweaked the card draw a little bit to make the experience a little more challenging or a little less challenging.
Very good. And also we have some scenarios that have changed.
Yes. Again, for playability purposes, some of the locations needed to be revised. Not as many as the regular cards. So we decided just to include the ones which are modified from the normal game, and that you will replace in the shadow deck. So I haven't set up. It's quite easy. You just take the 2 new shadow decks. You just swap
Replace
the locations.
those cards,
Yeah,
and that's it.
that's easy. So that's and the co-op experience. I think it came up really nicely because, say, especially if you are not an expert player, playing your 2 hands against the 2 bots can be a little bit
Overwhelming.
heavy. So instead, when you play co-op, each of you plays one of the 3 people deck, and each of you controls one of the shadow bots. So it becomes much faster. So personally, if I am playing really solo, I would prefer to use the dual mode so that I only play 1 deck against 1 shadow bot. That's much faster, simpler, but it's a really nice 2-player co-op experience.
Okay.
And if you are more than 2 players, of course, you just play the normal game.
Yeah, that's it. Cool, and the players can like help each other, like in the base game. in
Yes,
co-op mode.
exactly. Say level of cooperation is the same. Of course, the 2 decks of the 3 people interact with each other, so they have cards to support each other. You can talk. Of course, there is nobody listening on the other side.
We can talk freely.
Yeah, you can talk freely. Yeah,
Cool.
yeah, and you need to, because the shadow bots are really mean. They're really aggressive.
Perfect. Okay, Roberto, and I know that there's another expansion coming.
Yeah. That's actually, this one took precedence in the end, because the development, it was a little bit complex, but it was also very fast. While the other one, in the end, changes the game a little bit more drastically. Yeah, because it expands the game up to 6 players.
Wow.
It adds to the game, let's say, the other half of the board. If you think of the map of Middle Earth as we have it in the board game, because in the normal card game, essentially we have the southern part of the board, so from Lorien, Rivendell down. But so we miss all the action in the northern part of Middle Earth, like Woodland Realm, Erebor, Dale, the Grey Heavens. And so it both adds the possibility of playing with up to 6 players, and also adds more locations, a different mechanic, So because now with more battlegrounds, of course you need a little more control over the battleground deck. But I think it can be very interesting because it can modify your normal 3-4 players game, or it can expand the player count up to 6. And there are more dwarves too.
More dwarves. I like
because
it.
otherwise we have the dwarf
Yeah.
faction with Ghibli.
With Ghibli, that's all. Yeah.
More dwarfs. in
So
the
when it's 6
expansion.
players, it's 3 versus 3.
Yes, 3 against
Awesome.
3. So the logic remains the same.
Okay, but you can use the cards of the new expansion for playing 2 versus 2 or not?
Yes, there will be scenarios essentially like we did in the normal game, so that you can use the new cards but only play a 4-player game. So we'll just have to build up your decks in a different way.
Okay. You have to change some factions. Or
Yes,
whatever.
exactly.
Okay, and this expansion, when it's going to be released?
We are finished with the main design and all the illustration. So we think that by the end of the year, probably we will be ready to launch the printing of the English language version to give to our partners like Devir. And so probably before the end of next year, it can be released in Spanish and in other languages.
Perfect. Great news for us because we all the things of War of the Ring are super celebrated.
Thank you.
And we have like the big announcement, the big expansion that we were expecting. Kings of Middle Earth is finally in our hands.
Yes, the long-awaited party.
A long way.
Yes, it was long in the making. In the end, it was last to arrive at the show, but it's here finally.
Yeah, finally. When you started to think about Kings of Middle Earth?
I think it was like 2019.
Wow.
Like that.
5 years ago.
Yeah,
That's a lot.
Yes, so I think immediately after we released the Warriors of Middle Earth, we started working on this one. I think it was first announced 2020. But then, a little bit of the slowdown in the development pipeline of COVID. A little bit also my own fault because, unfortunately, as my main job is not designing games, of course, but it's overseeing all the development pipeline, production pipeline at RS Games. Then it takes away a lot of time, so I didn't have as much time as I would like to focus on this one. But finally, it's here.
Yeah, because we must remember that the game is from Roberto Di Meglio and also Marco Maggi and Francesco Nepitello. You are 3 authors.
Yes, and all lazy.
Not lazy. You're all hobbits. Love it.
It's in fact the main foundation of the development came when during one of my visits to Venice together with Francesco and Marco, and there we had all the basic concept laid down for both of the sovereign, the new mechanics that we have to handle the 5 sovereigns of the 3 people, and the new shadow characters as well. So the groundwork was all there, but then development and playtesting also, because War of the Ring is a very delicate game in terms of balancing, and players are very careful correctly. So I think in asking that we keep a good and balanced playing experience. So every time we expand it, we must be very careful to add and not to detract from the game.
Because if you touch something, maybe what?
Even very small things, especially when you play with expert players. Now there is a crowd of, after so many years on the market, of very expert players who see incredible things when they play that we didn't imagine. So
that has to be amazing.
Yeah, they have an attention to the details and the possibility. Oh, but if you do this small change, then the snowball effect on the strategies. So the development and playtesting took quite a lot of time, but we are very happy with the result. We actually dropped along the way one of the parts of the expansion that initially we considered to include, because one thing that we did with all the second edition expansion, we wanted somehow to redesign all the expansion content that we designed for the first edition expansion, Battles of the Third Age. So there were several elements which were included in Battles of the Third Age, which included characters like Galadriel and the Balrog, which included the ants, the corsairs, and so on. So what we call the factions, and so this part of the expansion became Lords of Middle-earth. Another part was developed to become Warriors of Middle-earth, and the part which is missing, still missing, is the siege engines part, which were included in the expansion. And people wanted us to bring back those siege engines. And initially we considered including them in this expansion, but somehow we didn't like how this worked together. It was a little bit put the focus of the expansion a little bit away from what it is, so about the corruption and trying on the other side to awaken the sovereigns of Middle-earth. So in the end we found that this part didn't work well together, and so we decided to leave it aside. Let's focus on the kings, let's make this new expansion work properly, and then that one maybe in the future can be the base for another expansion. But yeah, we think that there is enough of a change and enough of interesting new strategies which come out of Kings.
Very good. So, well, this is maybe like the most bold expansion, is the most big, and also the one that changes the game the most?
I think it's more or less on a level with Warriors of Middle-earth. I think in the way it impacts the game, in the sense that this is the first time with the Kings of Middle-earth that we give a new meaning to the hunt mechanic in War of the Ring.
Okay.
War of the Ring, to recap, what the shadow does, a part of the shadow actions can be set aside to hunt the fellowship, and the rest of the shadow actions can be used to maneuver your armies. And this is partly not under the full control of the shadow player, because when you roll eyes in your action dice roll, you are forced to put them in the hunt box. This is one of the core mechanics of War of the Ring. Didn't work exactly as we were supposed to, in the sense that we expected when we designed the game that there was a wider range of choices for the shadow players to decide, okay, I want to put a lot of my action toward corruption of the fellowship and just a few action on the military side. Then in actual gameplay, it didn't work like that. So normally the shadow player tries to put a little pressure on the fellowship, like one die or so in the hunt, and try to keep as much as possible for the military part. So this wasn't exactly what we wanted to do. We wanted to create this effect that Sauron wants to exert his evil will on Middle-earth, not just through his armies, but through other means as well, envoys like Grima, and the envoys that he sent to the north, to Erebor, and so on, through his efforts on the Palantir communication with Denethor and so on. So we wanted to reflect more of that.
Okay.
And so this is the first time with Kings of Middle-earth that we alter the hunt mechanic, because now in Kings of Middle-earth you can use the dice that are in the hunt pool instead of just using them for the fellowship. You can use them to try to corrupt the Kings of Middle-earth.
The kings, okay.
Yeah. So essentially what can happen is that you can take away one die from the hunt box instead of just keeping it locked there for the hunt of the fellowship, and use it for a corruption attempt against the kings. When you do a correction attempt, you draw hunt tiles, so similar hunt tiles to the ones which are used to corrupt the ring bearers. There are a few new ones in the expansion which are specifically designed to this, and you put them on the sovereign corruption board. And each sovereign has a different level of shadow resistance, reflecting how these characters developed themselves during the story. So, of course, Thranduil being an elf, and then because of dwarvish stubbornness,
More difficult.
they are the more difficult to corrupt. Men are a little bit weaker. Brand is more of an ordinary man. So while, say, from the story perspective, you might think, okay, but Theoden and Denethor should be easier to corrupt than Brand is, but we didn't think that was the case. So Denethor was under a very strong pressure from Sauron with the Palantir, with everything that happened, the death of Boromir, armies at his door, so there was a huge pressure on Denethor, and he almost made it. He almost was in control almost until the end. And Theoden, of course, again, as a very powerful influence from Saruman, Grima, and so on. But again, he held on. So we thought that while these characters were, of course, under the strongest pressure from the shadow in terms of gameplay, were the ones where Sauron was more strongly focusing his corruption attempt, they still proved to have very strong wills, and so we decided to make them a little bit stronger than an ordinary man, let's say, like Brand, which is a hero and everything, but it's not the same strength of will than Denethor or Theoden. And so this new mechanic will allow you to corrupt the sovereign, corrupt in a very general sense, of course, in the sense that these kings become somehow under the influence of the shadow, and so they fall to despair, they fall to madness. It's not like they become like shadow puppets or evil, but they are now, say, can be easily manipulated and influenced by the shadow. And this is reflected by the fact that a specific cards which gives essentially an advantage to the shadow and some disadvantage to the free people's player enters play. And on the other side, if the free people player managed to awaken them, so to just like in the story, you imagine Gandalf with Theoden, so getting them to raise against the shadow, to put up themselves against the shadow with strength, and then you get them as characters in the game, and they give you, so they essentially become companion-like in terms of their abilities, and they add additional strength to the defense of the free people. So it's a fight for the souls of these kings and sovereigns, and so depending on who wins the fight can swing the balance in favor of the free people of the shadow. So
they start corrupted?
No, they start say normal. So we use the gray leader-like figures. So at the beginning of the game, they function as a normal leader, essentially. And when you awaken them, essentially awakening doesn't seem that hard. Essentially, you need to have activated the nation, or to have the nation at war, in the case of the elves, and just spend one die.
Okay.
But for the free people player, one die is precious. So do I really want to use one die to awaken Brand, or should I rather send Gondor to war? So it's that kind of decision. So it's not spending one die to awaken a sovereign. It's not. Of course, there is the possibility of doing things with your companions, sending them out. There are new cards which can influence these mechanics. But the core mechanic is that if you want, you can just awaken them. But you have so many things to do that deciding to awaken them is not.
Sometimes it's difficult.
Okay.
So they start neutral, and you can make them for free people as an advantage.
Exactly.
But if you don't do it, maybe
they will end up probably being corrupted by the shadow and being an evil influence, a bad influence.
But if you wake them up,
Yeah.
they can be corrupted later?
No. Once they
see the light.
yes, once they see the light, they are safe. Or once they are corrupted, they are lost. At least
When they are
within
corrupted, you can't
within the
wake them up.
context of the game, yes, they are. The only thing that you can do, and here a little bit of Peter Jackson reminiscence, with Denethor falling out of the Tower of Ectelion. The only thing you can get rid of them.
You
So
can kill
you
them.
can eliminate them by sending an appropriate companion where they are.
Okay.
So, for example, you can imagine Boromir dethroning Denethor because he arrives in Minas Tirith to say, "Okay, Dad, you're crazy now, so please
There's nothing to
step
do here."
aside. It's me doing the steward now." So it's,
That's good. That's good. I like it.
yeah.
Okay, so this is one of the main mechanics of the new expansion.
Yes, essentially it is. But so of course, we wanted also to add some new toys for the
Okay.
shadow player because, of course, this mechanic is already, say, almost perfectly self-balancing in the sense that, of course, the kings can become useful for the shadow or for the free peoples. Still, we decided that we wanted to add some interesting new element for the directly, let's say, for the shadow as well. So we
Okay.
added a new type of minions, which are called the Dark Chieftains.
The Dark Chieftains.
And so the Dark Chieftains, we got one for every nation of the shadow. So we've got the Gluck for Isengard, we've got the Black Serpent for the Southrons and Easterlings, I've got the Shadow of Mirkwood for the Mordor, for the Sauron armies. And so these Dark Chieftains are, say, essentially powerful generals. They are not Nazgûl, so they don't have the same kind of abilities that Nazgûl have, but still can be very powerful when leading your armies. And this also allowed us to be a little bit symmetrical in the use of this new action die, which we call the ruler die. And this is a new action die which comes in play when either at least one Dark Chieftain is in play or when at least one of the sovereigns has been awakened. By the way, you
okay.
see the black ring here. So depending if you awaken a character, you just replace the gray figures with a character silver figures like the other companions. But if it's corrupted instead, you add the black ring to mark the corrupted
So like
status.
this is neutral.
This is neutral as in the beginning as a leader, so it's the same color, same gray color
Okay.
as regular leaders are. This is awakened using the same colors as the companion, and this is a corrupted version with the black ring instead to mark it.
Very
In
good.
the game, leaders, characters are both silver, both for the shadow and the three people, so we keep the same, and leaders are always gray. So it's we prefer to keep the same color scheme. And the ruler die is also a nice new twist.
It's more powerful.
Yeah, it's not really more powerful than a regular action dice, but it gives you more choices. What happens is that when you have a ruler die in play, you do your action roll normally, but then among all the dice in the action roll, you can choose one to discard and the other ones you keep. So this means that when you add the ruler die, you don't really have more actions, but you have more choice between the roll and action. So it gives you a little more freedom. Adding one action in War of the Ring is a pretty big deal because especially the way the game is balanced, three peoples against the shadow. If you add one action here, one action there, the balance swings a lot. So we prefer to tweak in this way so that they give a little more freedom, a little more control over the roll. And
So
then
you don't add the die, you replace it.
yeah, so essentially you roll the die together with your normal action roll dice. So you roll, say, 5, you choose 1, you discard, and you use the other 4. So in the end, it's pretty simple. And the other thing is that the ruler die ties in with the abilities of the sovereigns. So you can use the ruler die either as a normal action die or sometimes it connects to the ability of a sovereign you awakened to give a more specific, stronger power. Say, for example, Thranduil, if he uses the character result on the ruler die these character results become stronger, allowing you to move the fellowship in a more safe way, and so it's because his influence protecting the ring bearer. So it's ties in with the awakened sovereigns to make the action a little more powerful, adds more freedom to the action roll. So it's an interesting twist, let's say, on the normal action roll mechanic. And you got one for each player, so one for the three people, so one for the shadow.
Very good. Also, we have more cards as
Yeah.
added to the deck.
Yes,
Or-
they are added to the deck or sometimes replaced in the decks. So again, as we did a little bit as we did with the other expansions, you will have essentially a couple of entirely new cards to go in each deck. Some card effects which are replaced. Mostly, in the regular game, there was a series of cards which were somehow all related to these five characters. So, Thranduil's Archers, Dane's Ironfoot, King Brandsman. So, they were somehow meant to represent the role of the kings in the game. And a little bit like we did with the other expansion, what the expansion does is expand the presence of these characters beyond the level of including them just as a regular card. Say like the Ants, the Ant faction in the regular game is just 3 cards in the free people deck. In Warriors of Middle Earth, it becomes ants marching through Middle Earth. And so we did the same here, and so all these cards have been replaced with new effects which tie in with the new mechanic, because of course we are also using the new cards to make the presence of the new mechanics stronger.
Okay. So those cards interact with the sovereigns.
Exactly.
Awesome.
In both ways, of course. So there are cards allowing the shadow to better corrupt the sovereigns, and while cards allow helping the free people in handling them. So it's about 20 new cards, 10 for each player, partly just added, and there are some nice combos that player can discover. I will spoil one. So there is a great combo with the new combat effect, like a God of Old, which not by chance is named as a quote about Theoden, because this allows you to add the role based on the leadership of the character. And Theoden, when he charges in the first round of battle, is a leadership of 3, so it's a super powerful in the first round of battle. So if you have Theoden charging, playing like a God of Old, you can really envision the Rohirrims charging on the Pelennor fields, to save Minas Tirith.
That's amazing. We love those things.
And of course, just like we do with all combat effects, it can be that, but it can also be other things. So we wanted to have the possibility of recreating things straight out of the story, but also making more possibilities available to the players.
Very good. So more or less, this is Kings of Middle Earth.
Yes. That's
the last expansion for now.
For now, yeah, there's still the siege machine, the siege engines waiting.
So Roberto, what would you recommend to play Kings of Middle Earth by himself only with the base game, or mixing it with another expansion?
I think I would really recommend you start the first time you add this expansion, just add the expansion with the core game and see how it changes the game. And I think that's already a very interesting, say new way of playing that it's worth in itself. Then, of course, you can add it to either Lords or Warriors. Of course, say playing Lords, Warriors, Kings, and the core game. Okay, take your time, take your afternoon out, shut down your phone, and relax. It will be a great afternoon, but it will take probably all the afternoon.
But this is like the ultimate experience to everything.
I'm sure there will people who want to do that, rightly so. I think it's a lot, of gears and wheels that will be rotating together. So it's very interesting. And we added in the rules, we added a section specifically to try to keep, as I said, we try to keep balance as good as we can, no matter the way you play. So there is a specific section which is devoted to small tweaks that you can include with the game when you play with Kings of Middle Earth together with the other expansions, because say Lords of Middle Earth steers the balance in a way, Waters of Middle Earth steers the balance in another way. So overall, we thought that it was needed to add some small changes when you play with the other expansion. It's probably something that most players wouldn't even notice, but especially for tournament level players who play a lot of games, these are the kind of things that they are.
They need to know.
They need to know.
Cool, Roberto. And you're saying to me, well, this is the last expansion for now. So there are more plans for World of the Rings?
Okay, so there is so much love for this game, of course, that we can't really abandon it. As I said, we really want to do something with the siege engines and mechanic that we started to develop. We think that, say, giving a little bit more depth to the way combat is resolved, it can be interesting. So that's something we're now working on developing, say, how to make that siege engines not just as a mechanic on their own, but as a way, possibly together with other mechanics, to make combat a little bit more deeper. That's something that we want to do. There is a lot of interesting fan-made materials out there, and we also start to see, like, with alternate scenarios, alternate twists to the game. So we are looking at some of those because we would like to have some sort of a scenario package, along the lines of what we did with the Breaking of the Fellowship scenario or Fate of Erebor, to add some more twist to the game in terms of different scenarios. So these are definitely things that, in terms of gameplay. Plus, we have some physical upgrades. We are now testing something that a lot of players were asking for. They were not happy with the type of plastic that we were using for the core game. We are now testing a new kind of plastic, a new kind of injection technique. So we are trying to make the improvements on the miniature side of the game. And if we manage to do that to our satisfaction, maybe this will become sort of an upgrade kit for existing players, so that you can get the improved miniatures. And the other thing is, after using these rings here, we realized that they could be used to solve one of the problems that some players, one of the issues some players have with the game, because they want to have different colors for the different nations or the different peoples in the shadow.
That's always something,
Yeah, and I think it's not really that big a deal, because the sculpts are quite different, and in the end, in a battle, if you have a North regular or an elf regular, most of the time it doesn't make any difference. So it's not like that you make a critical mistake if you mistake one figure for another. But still, a lot of players say, oh, but I really want to have different colors. And the rings look very nicely in all the 20 millimeters bases for all the characters and elite units. So we asked our factory to develop similar rings for the regular figures, which are 40 millimeters, right? So we are preparing this upgrade kit with the rings alone. So it will be rings in 8 colors, so that you can add them to the game if you want. If you don't care, you can just buy the regular game at its normal price without spending more money. But if you are in for upgrading your game, that's an easy way to upgrade your game if you're not keen on painting the figures.
Well, that's a very good idea, I think.
Yeah, it's simple. Yeah, it's it's one of the, okay. Why don't we do this also for the regular figures? Well, so it's a couple of physical things to say, the upgraded miniatures, if we get them like we want them to be, and the rings. But of course, having more gameplay content if we can.
Awesome news, Roberto. So thank you very much.
Thank you, man.
Thank you for keep developing War of the Ring because we never have enough.
Thank you. Yes.
And thanks for this little chat with us for Devir TV.
Thanks a lot for your time. Thanks a lot to everybody who was listening.
Okay, have a great show.
Ciao. See you.
Hasta la próxima.